Hi, I'm Grandma Louise, Louise Andress Knapp. This is
AKA Cool Snubs.
this is September 12th, 2021. I am 82 years old, and this is a picture of me when I was 53 years old in 1992. So I did look better than this at one time. Um, Tim suggested that we do a Zoom meeting and that we record some of the stories that I used to tell the kids when they were young. I sent out an email asking my kids to remind me of some of the things that they remembered, and I got a list back. So I'm going to try and tell some of those things. Some of the stories were Bible stories, and some were just kid stories. I'm going to start with Moses as a baby. And that story is in Exodus. Um, the children of Israel, now Israel was the name of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they were taken to Egypt, and they survived the famine by being there, and the Pharaoh of Egypt let them live in Goshen. And then the Israelites became a more populous people, and they got to be quite a few people. And that Pharaoh died, and the next Pharaoh made the children of Israel into slaves. And they began to be afraid that there would be too many children of Israel and that they might rise up and take over the Egyptians. So they made a law that all of the Hebrew or children of Israel, that's the same, two different names for the same group of people, that all the Hebrew male babies be killed. And Moses's parents didn't want their baby killed, and they named him Moses. And his mother made a basket of reeds and put pitch on it so that it would hold the water. And she put Moses in it, and put his older sister Marion there. The mother put Moses in the river and had Marion watch. And Pharaoh, that's the king of Egypt, his daughter and her maidens were down by the river to bathe in the river, and they saw the basket with Moses in it, and they pulled him out. The daughter of Pharaoh pulled him out, and she knew that he was a Hebrew child, but she looked on him and said, well, she wanted him for her son. So Marion said, do you want me to get a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby? And Pharaoh's daughter said yes. So Marion went and got her own mother, Moses's own mother, and she came and she took care of Moses and nursed him. And then later Moses grew up and eventually led the children of Israel out of Egypt. So that's that part of that story. Another story is that one of my kids requested was the story of Elijah. Elijah was a prophet in the Old Testament, and the story about Elijah is in First Kings. The story of Moses. Did I tell you that it started in Genesis?
You said Exodus.
Oh, sorry, I'm wrong. Oh, I had it written here.
It's all right. Anyone who wants can look it up themselves.
Okay. So Elijah was a prophet, and he the Israelites were wicked, and Elijah said, well, there won't be any rain for 2 years to teach you people to repent and turn to God. And God told Elijah to go to a certain cave by a brook so that he had water to drink. And then he sent the ravens, birds, and they brought him bread and food for a long time. And then the brook dried up, and then the Lord told Elijah to go to a certain woman, a widow's house. And he went there, and the widow was out gathering up sticks. And he said, please bring me a drink. And she said, okay. And he said, thank you. Please bring me a oil cake. And she said, well, I'm just gathering wood. I've just got a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil, and I'm going to make a cake for me and my son, and we're going to eat it, and then we're going to die, because that was all the food they had. And he said, if you will do what you said and make the cake and make some for me too and share it with me, then you'll never run out of meal or flour, and you'll never run out of oil. So she did that and shared it with him, and then he stayed at their house for a long time. And at one point, her son became very, very sick. And she said, well, what have you done to me? Did you come to live at my house so that you could make my son sick and have him die? And the son was so sick that he didn't have any breath left. So Elijah took him upstairs to the loft, and Elijah stretched his body on the son 3 different times and prayed to God, and the spirit came back into the boy, and he was healed. And then Elijah said, well, you wicked Israelites are worshiping the idol Baal, Baal. He said, bring all your priests and prophets, and let's find out who is the true God. And he said, okay, we'll make 2 altars, and we'll have 2 bullocks. You choose one bullock and you put it on the altar, and have Baal come and start a fire and sacrifice the bullock on the altar. And they did, and so they dressed out the bullock and put it on the altar and started to pray to Baal to come and do the fire, and he didn't, and he didn't. And then Elijah started to make fun of him and said, well, maybe your God is on a journey, or maybe he's taking a nap, or maybe he's talking to someone. And the priests of Baal started to cry louder and cut themselves and everything, but their God didn't send fire. And then Elijah said, he fixed up an altar and he put the bullock on it, and he said, now bring water and dump on the bullock and on the altar. And he dug a ditch around the altar and filled that with water. And he called on God to send down fire, and God sent down fire and burned up the bullock on the altar and burned up all the water in the ditch around the altar too. And then later, Elijah was translated. He was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire and translated. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about Elijah.
What the
Another,
heck is a bullock?
it's a male cow.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is Noah and the flood. The people became very, very wicked, very wicked. And God told Noah to build an ark. That's a big boat. And he started to build the ark, and the people made fun of him, and he kept calling them to repentance and telling them that they better repent. They just made fun and became more and more wicked. And now this part is not in the Bible. Somebody told me this part, and you can believe it or not, but they said that the reason God had Noah build the ark, because he was going to have a flood, was because the people had become so wicked that the children didn't have the chance to choose between right and wrong, because it was all wrong. It was all so wicked. So anyway, finally, Noah got the ark built, and the Lord told him to take animals into the ark. So there was Noah and his wife and his 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and their wives, and then a male and female of all of the species of the animals, and of the clean animals, there were 7 of each kind, and they took them into the ark, and then it began to rain, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and the only people that were saved were Noah and his family that were in the ark, and all of the other people drowned, and the earth was cleansed. And the prophecy is that that was the baptism of water, and that in the last days that are coming, there will be a baptism of the earth by fire, and the wicked in the last days will be burned up. That's
What
the end of that one.
what happened to the unicorns?
That's a myth, and I don't know. There's a myth that said that there were unicorns that wouldn't get in the ark, and so they were washed away in the flood, and that's why we don't have unicorns anymore. But I don't think that part's in the Bible. Then there was Jesus walking on the water. Jesus was teaching the people, and there were thousands of them gathered. And then his disciples said, "Well, send them away and send them back to the city to get food." And Jesus said, "No, we don't need to do that. You feed them." And they said, "Well, we've only got 5 loaves and 2 fishes." And he said, "Bring them to me." So he did, and they did. And now this story is in Matthew, I think, starting with chapter 17. And Jesus prayed and blessed the loaves and the fishes, and they fed 5,000 men plus women and children. And when he got done feeding them all, there was 12 baskets of food left over. And then he told the disciples to go get in the ship, and he sent the multitude away, and he went up in the mountain to pray. And then he came down, and there was a storm on the water, and the waves were high and rough, and he came walking to them on the water. And the disciples saw someone walking, and they were afraid. They wondered what kind of a spirit it was. And he said to them, "Don't be afraid, it's me." And when Peter saw that, he said, "Oh, Lord, if it's you, have me come to you." And Jesus said, "Come." And Peter got out of the ship and started to walk on the water. And then the waves became high and big, and Peter became afraid and started to sink. And he called out to the Lord, "Save me." And the Lord reached out his hand and caught him and saved him and said, "Well, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Well, that's the end of that one. So that's the end of the stories that I was specifically requested to talk about. I wanted to tell you a couple of things. This was something that my father taught me. We were timbering at the east of Oakley, and we worked with Heavy Russell and his daughter Renee. And on the weekend, we had to, when we went home, we weren't up there on Sunday to feed the horses, so we'd give them extra hay so that they'd last over Sunday till we got back Monday. But right next to where we were timbering, there was a big barbed wire fence, and on the other side of the fence was tall, tall, tall grass. And that area was summer homes. And it's doubtful that the people who owned the summer homes ever used the grass. So Heavy Russell said to Pa, well, should we just cut the wire and let the horses in there? And Pa said no. And Pa didn't want to, because he knew that was wrong to cut somebody's fence and let your horses in on their property without permission. That was stealing. So then Pa said to us, there was me and Doug and Jim, I think, and Pa said to us, this was not in front of Heavy Russell, but he told us, he said, if a person will steal for you, he will steal from you. And I was able to get the understanding of that, and that sunk in. Here's another saying: if you take offense where offense was intended, you are a fool. If you take offense where no offense was intended, you are twice the fool.
That'd be a good one for. That'd be a good one for most people in our society to adopt.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. There was a story called Epaminondas. I thought it was Epaminondas, but it's Epaminondas. It's about a little black boy, and he would go see his mother's sister, his auntie, and sometimes she'd give him things to take home. So one day he went to see her, and she had just baked a cake, and she said, Epaminondas, would you like to take some cake home to your mother? And he said yes. So she cut him a big slice of cake and gave it to him, and he held it in his hand, and he squished it tight in his fist. And when he got home, his mother said, Epaminondas, what's that? And he said, that's cake. And she said, oh, you've smashed it. You've messed it up. The way to carry cake home is you wrap it in leaves and put it in your hat. You put it on your head and put your hat on, and come home that way. And she said, now, do you hear me, Epaminondas? And he said, yes, mammy. So the next day he went to see his aunt, and she said, oh, I've got some sweet butter. You want to take sweet butter home to your mother? And he said, yes. So she gave him sweet butter, and he wrapped it in leaves and put it on his head and put his hat on and started to walk home. And it was really hot, and the butter melted and ran down his forehead and ran in his ears and ran down his cheeks and ran down his neck. And when he got home, his mother said, what is that? And he said, that's sweet butter. And she said, oh, Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. That's not the way to carry butter home. If you carry butter, you wrap it in leaves and you cool it in the creek, and you cool it in the creek. Now, Epaminondas, did you hear me? And he said, yes, mammy. So the next day he went to see his aunt, and she gave him a puppy. So Epaminondas took that puppy and wrapped it in leaves and took it to the creek and cooled it in the creek and cooled it in the creek. Of course, it didn't last. She got home. What's that? Well, that's a puppy. Oh, Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. If you have a puppy, you you tie a string around its neck and set it on the ground and gently lead it home. You ain't got the sense you was born with. Did you hear me, Epaminondas? He said, yes, mammy. And she said, well, I'm not going to let you go to Auntie's anymore. I'm going to go. So the next day she said, okay, Epaminondas, I'm going to see Auntie, and I've just baked some pies and I've got them out on the porch to cool. Now you be careful where you step. He said, okay, mammy. So mammy went away and Epaminondas went out on the porch, and he was very careful. He stepped in the middle of every one of the pies. Now, do you know what happened after that?
No.
No, and neither do I, and neither does anyone else. Okay, that's the end of that one. Okay, there was one little black Sambo. Little black Sambo's mother was called Black Mumbo, and Black Mumbo made little black Sambo a pretty red jacket and a pretty pair of pants, and his dad was named Black Jumbo, and Black Jumbo bought him a pair of crimson slippers and a green umbrella and gave them to him. And Black Sambo, little Black Sambo, put all of these things on, held his umbrella, and went for a walk in the jungle. And he was walking along, and here came a tiger, and he said, little Black Sambo, I'm going to eat you. And little Black Sambo said, oh, don't eat me. If you don't eat me, I will give you my little red coat. The tiger said, okay. So little Black Sambo gave him the red coat, and the tiger put it on and started to strut around, and he said, I am the grandest tiger in the jungle. Little Black Sambo went along, and here came another tiger, and he said, I am going to eat you. And little Black Sambo said, oh, don't eat me. If you won't eat me, I'll give you my pants. He said, okay. So little Black Sambo gave him the pants, and he put them on, and he started to strut around. He said, the tiger said, I am the grandest tiger in the jungle, and went on his way. Little Black Sambo kept walking along, and here came another tiger, and he said, little Black Sambo, I'm going to eat you. And little Black Sambo said, oh, don't eat me. If you won't eat me, I'll give you my sandals. And the tiger said, well, I have to walk on all four of my feet. What would I do with your sandals? And little Black Sambo said, well, you can put one on each ear. And he said, okay. So he took the sandals and put one on each ear and walked away and said, I am the grandest tiger in the jungle. Then he walked along, and here came another tiger, and said, little Black Sambo, I'm going to eat you. He said, oh, don't eat me. I'll give you my umbrella. And the tiger said, well, I can't. How can I hold an umbrella? He said, well, you can tie a knot in your tail and hold it that way. And he said, okay. So he took the umbrella and strutted off in the jungle and said, I am the grandest tiger in the jungle. And then little Black Sambo heard a roaring and a growling, and looked, and there were the tigers, and they were fighting, each one claiming to be the grandest tiger in the jungle. And little Black Sambo was scared, and he climbed a tree. And the tigers fought around with each other, and they got around the tree, and they took off all their clothes and the sandals and the umbrella and started to chase each other. And they got a hold of the tiger in front of them by the tail, and they went around, chasing around and around and around the tree. And they went so fast that you couldn't see their legs, and they melted into butter. And just then, Black Jumbo came walking home with a big brass pot, and he saw all that butter, and he scooped it up, and little Black Sambo went with him, and they went home, and Black Mumbo said, "Oh, this is wonderful, all this butter. I will make hotcakes tonight." So she made hotcakes, and she used all that butter, and they used the butter to spread on the hotcakes. And Black Mumbo ate 27 hotcakes. Black Jumbo ate 93 hotcakes, and little Black Sambo ate 129 hotcakes. And that's the end.
Where'd that story come from?
I don't know.
Probably,
Somebody told it to me when I was a kid.
probably someone experimenting with drugs.
Well, when I was first married and lived in Provo, there was a restaurant on what is now, well, it was Bulldog Boulevard, but now it's Cougar something or other. But there was a restaurant there called Little Black Sambo Restaurant. But then there got to be so much fuss over racial prejudice that they had to do away with it. Okay. Three billy goats gruff. Once there were three billy goats that lived in a pasture, and they were fine. There was big billy goat gruff, middle billy goat gruff, and little billy goat gruff. But over across a bridge, there was another pasture, and the grass looked greener on the other side of the bridge. And they wanted to go over, but there was a mean troll who lived under the bridge. And they said, well, if we go over the bridge, the troll will get us. And but they thought that the grass looked so good, they thought they'd risk it. So little Billy Goat Gruff said he'd try it first. So he went clip clop over the bridge, and the troll came out from under the bridge, and he said, "Who's trip tropping, clip clopping across my bridge?" And the little Billy Goat Gruff said, "It is I, the little Billy Goat Gruff." And he said, the troll said, "I'm going to eat you." He said, "Oh, don't eat me. Middle Billy Goat Gruff will be coming over, and he's bigger. He'll be a better meal." The troll said, "Okay, go on your way." So little Billy Goat Gruff went over to the other pasture, and then middle Billy Goat Gruff came along, and he went trit trot over the bridge, and the troll came out from under the bridge and said, "Who's trit trotting over my bridge?" And the middle Billy Goat Gruff said, "It is I, the middle Billy Goat Gruff." And he said, "I'm going to eat you." Billy Goat Gruff said, "Oh, don't eat me. I'm the middle Billy Goat Gruff. I have a bigger brother that's coming over. He's a lot bigger. He'll be a better meal." And the troll said, "Okay, go on." So he went on, and then the big Billy Goat Gruff came over, and he went trit trot, and the troll came out from under the bridge and said, "Who's trit trotting over my bridge?" And the big Billy Gruff said, "It is I, the big Billy Goat Gruff." And the troll said, "I'm going to eat you." And the troll and the big Billy Goat Gruff ran and bunted the troll and knocked him off the bridge into the river. And that was the end of the troll. And the Billy Goats Gruffs crossed the bridge whenever they wanted. That's the end of that one.
So is it trit trot or is it clip clop?
It's trit trot.
Okay.
All right. Should we keep going?
You got more stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hansel and Gretel. their father was a woodsman, and their mother died, and their father married a wicked, wicked stepmother. And she became angry at how much food the children ate. And she said, "We've got to get rid of these children." And the woodsman said, "No, no, no, we can't do that." But Hansel and Gretel heard her, and she said, I'm gonna take them into the woods and leave them. So Hansel went out that night and gathered up some stones. And the next day, the wicked stepmother took the children and went into the forest. And as they walked along, Hansel took out stones from his pocket and dropped them along the way. And then they got to a certain place in the forest, and the wicked stepmother said, "You wait here." And she left him and went away, and she didn't come back. And Hansel said, "Well, don't worry, Gretel. I know the way home. We'll just follow the stones that I dropped." So they did, and they got back home safe. And then the wicked stepmother was really mad. So sometime later, she said she was going to take him into the forest again, but she locked him in the room so that they couldn't get stones. But as they started to walk into the forest, she gave him some bread, and Hansel dropped breadcrumbs along the way so that he could have a guide to follow to get back home. And the stepmother took him to a certain place in the woods and left him there. And when they went to follow the breadcrumbs home, the birds had eaten them and they couldn't find their way home. So they were very sad. So they started to walk, and they found a gingerbread house, and they were thrilled. So they went to the gingerbread house, and a lady let them in and said, "Come on in, I'll get you something to eat." And after they got in the gingerbread house, they found out she was a witch. And she said, "I'm going to fatten Hansel and I'm going to eat him." So she put him in a cage, and she made Gretel cook for him and feed him every day. Well, every day the witch would check. She had very poor eyesight, but she'd check on him and she'd say, "Stick your finger out and let me see if you're fat." And every day he'd put a stick, and she'd feel the stick, and it wasn't fat. So she kept saying, "Gretel, feed him more, feed him more." So Gretel kept cooking and feeding him. Finally, the witch got sick of it and said, "Well, I'm going to eat him anyway." So she made Gretel build a fire in the stove, and then she said, "Now, Gretel, you check the oven and see if it's hot." And Gretel said, "Well, I don't know how to do that. You show me how." So the witch said, "Well, this is the way you do it." And she opened the oven door, and Gretel shoved her in the oven and shut the door. And the old witch burned up. And Hansel and Gretel were ready to leave, and they noticed that there was a treasure chest, and it was full of wonderful treasures, diamonds and rubies and emeralds. And they filled their pockets with them, and they started home. And luckily, they were able to find their way home. And when they got home, they found out that their wicked stepmother had died, and their father was so, so, so glad to see them. And that's the end of that story.
Nice.
Okay, the next story is Rumpelstiltskin. There was a poor farmer who had a beautiful daughter, and he was tired of being poor. So he took his daughter to the king, and he said, King, my daughter has a real talent. She can spin straw into gold. And the king said, oh, well, that's awesome. Let's try it. So put the daughter in a room with straw. And he said, now in the morning, I'm going to come back, and this straw better be turned into gold, or else I'll have your head cut off. Well, the daughter was terrified and didn't know what to do. And she was locked in the room. And a funny little man came in, and he said, do you have a problem? And she said, yes, I'm supposed to spin this straw into gold, but I don't know how. And he said, well, I can do it. If I do it, what will you give me? And she said, I'll give you my necklace. And he said, okay. So he said the magic words and had the spinning wheel start going, and it spun the straw into gold. The next morning, the king in and saw all the straw was made into gold, and he was thrilled. But he was greedy, so he wanted more. So he did the same thing the next night and put the girl in with the straw again and told her to spin it into gold. And she didn't know what to do. And again, this little funny old man came in, and he said, you got a problem? And she said, yes, I'm supposed to spin this straw into gold. And he said, well, if I'll do it for you, what will you give me? And she said, I'll give you my ring. And he said, okay. So he spun the straw into gold. And the next morning, the king came in, and he was thrilled that all that straw had been turned into gold. And he said, oh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. If you'll do this one more night, then because you're so talented and you're so beautiful, I will marry you and you'll be my queen. And then he left, and she didn't know what to do. And then the little old man came again, and he said, you've got a problem. And she said, yes, I have to spin this straw into gold. And he said, if I do it for you, what will you give me? And she said, I don't have anything else to give you. And he said, well, you're going to be the queen. Will you give me your firstborn child? And she thought, well, if I don't, I'll get my head cut off. And so she said yes. So he spun the straw into gold. And the next day the king came, and he was thrilled, and he married the girl, and she was the queen. And then a year later, they had a child, and the queen had forgotten all about her promise to this funny little old man. But after the baby was a few days old, and the queen was so thrilled to have this baby, and the little old man came and said, I came to get the baby that you promised me. And she said, oh, no, no. Oh, don't take my baby. Oh, no. And he said, you promised. And she said, oh, but please, I don't want you to take my baby. Please don't take my baby. And he said, okay, under one condition. He said, I'll give you 3 days to guess my name. If you get my name right, you can keep the baby. If you don't, I'm going to take the baby as you promised. So the queen sent messengers out all over the kingdom to gather all the names that they could gather. And they came back with names. And she, the next day, the little old man came and said, what's my name? And she said, is it Scott? No. Is it Jeremy? No. Is it Bill? No. And she gave him the names, and he said they were wrong. And he said 2 more days. So she sent the messengers out again, and they gathered names and came back. And she said, is it Sam? The little old man came again, and she said, is your name Sam? No. Is your name John? No. Is your name Christopher? No. And he got more and more happy, and he said, one more day. She sent the messengers out again, and when they came back, they didn't have any names except one of the messengers said, "You know, I saw a little old man dancing and singing." And he said, his song said, "Tomorrow I will get to have the queen's baby because she will never know that my name is Rumpelstiltskin." So when the little old man came back, she guessed, uh, "Is your name Clinton? No. Is your name Zedekiah? No. Is your name Rumpelstiltskin?" And he was astonished and he was angry and he started to jump and jump and jump and cram his foot into the floor, and he made a hole right through the floor and he fell through the floor. And that was the end of Rumpelstiltskin, and the queen was able to save her baby. That's the end.
What happened to the queen's poor farmer dad?
I think he probably came and lived in the palace with them. What do you think?
I don't know.
Well, I don't either. We could just make it up. Okay. There was a little old woman who found a sixpence, and she bought a pig with it.
What's a sixpence?
It's a piece of money in English money. I don't know. You probably know, don't you?
Well, pence means penny, so maybe a 6 penny coin, huh?
Maybe so. So this was in the old days. So maybe she could buy a pig for 6 pennies. I don't know that part. So she went to take the pig home, but it wouldn't get over the stile. Now, a stile is stairs that are built over a fence. So you can step up the stairs to the top of the fence and then step down the stairs the other side. But the pig wouldn't get over it. So she went along and she found a stick. And she said, "Stick, stick, beat dog, dog." No. She found a dog and she said, "Dog, dog, bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile and I won't get home tonight." And the dog wouldn't. So she went along and she found a stick and she said, "Stick, stick, beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile and I won't get home tonight." But the stick wouldn't. So she went along and she found a fire and she said, "Fire, fire, burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile and I won't get home tonight." And the fire wouldn't. So she went along and she found a bucket of water and she said, "Water, water, quench fire. Fire won't burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile and I won't get home tonight." But the water wouldn't. She went along and she found an ox. She said, "Ox, ox, drink water. Water won't quench fire. Fire won't burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile. And I won't get home tonight." But the ox wouldn't. She went along and she found a butcher and she said, "Butcher, butcher, kill ox. Ox won't drink water. Water won't quench fire. Fire won't burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile. And I won't get home tonight." But your butcher wouldn't. She went along and she found a rope and she said, "Rope, rope, hang butcher. Butcher won't kill ox. Ox won't drink water. Water won't quench fire. Fire won't burn stick. Stick won't beat dog. Dog won't bite pig. Pig won't get over the stile. And I won't get home tonight." But the rope wouldn't. And she went along and she found a mouse. And she said, "Mouse, mouse, gnaw rope." And the mouse said, "Oh, I will if you'll get me some cheese." So she went along and got some cheese and brought it back and gave it to the mouse. The mouse began to gnaw the rope. The rope began to hang the butcher. The butcher began to kill the ox. The ox began to drink the water. The water began to quench the fire. The fire began to burn the sticks. The stick began to beat the dog. The dog began to bite the pig. The pig got over the stile and the old woman got home that night. That's the end.
I haven't heard that since I was probably 8 years old. It's a good one.
Okay. Once there was a crooked mouth family, and Ma, she talked this way, and Pa, he talked this way, and brother, he talked this way, and sister, she talked this way. And one day they were trying to blow out a candle, and Ma went, and she couldn't blow out the candle. And she said, Pa, we should blow out this candle. He said, well, no, I said it wrong. She said, Pa, we should blow out this candle. Well, it will. Wish you would. Well, it will. They couldn't blow out the candle. And he said, Son, we should blow out this candle. Well, it will. Wish you would. Well, it will. He couldn't blow it out. And he said, Sister, we should blow out this candle. Well, it will. Wish you would. Well, it will. And she couldn't blow it out. And just then in came the sister's boyfriend, Bill, who had been away to college. And sister said, Bill, we should blow out this candle. He said, well, I will. She said, wish you would. He said, well, I will. And the candle went out, and Ma said, that's what you get for having a college education.
I don't think I've ever heard that one.
That's the end of that one.
I've heard all the stories except I don't remember that one.
I have, okay, let's pause.
Okay. See that?
I can see there's a picture of me as a little girl in the yard.
Yeah, I just want to show that picture. You showed a picture when you were 53. I want to show you a picture when you were 3.
Okay.
You're a little cute girl, aren't you?
I was cuter then, yeah.
You're cute now too. Okay. Let me find that other thing.
The thing that Tim's looking for is a thing that rules to live by. And my son Joseph recently told me that he remembers having that hanging in our house and having us go over it, and that it really made an impact in his life. And I wish that my children would have their children read it and understand the concepts of it.
Okay, so to that point, let's look at the very last line. It says, I will give $5 cash to any of my grandchildren or great grandchildren who can recite this. You sent that in an email a couple years ago, and I think you're gonna have to offer a lot more than $5 to get your grandkids to remember to memorize that.
Oh, okay, and that's fair. Now Rebecca Calabro did memorize it and did get her $5. But even if the kids don't memorize it, if the parents would read the list off every come follow me night, or every night at dinner for 5 times or 10 times, at least the kids would have the concepts in their mind.
Yeah, I'm just kind of joking that when I was a kid, the tooth fairy would visit me once every 4 teeth that fell out and gave me a couple pennies. Now your grandkids get a trip to Disneyland from the Tooth Fairy. So,
Well, I think you at least got a dime.
okay, can you see that well enough to read it?
I can't. Could you read it for me?
Yep. Rules to live by. If you open it, shut it. If you take it out, put it back. If you drop it, pick it up. If you break it, fix it or pay for it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If you make a mess, clean it up. If it's right, do it. If it's wrong, don't do it. If you don't know, ask your parents. If you are wrong, promptly admit it. If it's not true, don't say it. If you borrow it, return it. If it's yours, take care of it. If it's not yours, leave it alone. When appropriate, say please, thank you, you are welcome, I am sorry. Then you said Bernie said his mother taught him, when in doubt, do the kindest thing.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that wraps it up for now then.
Let me ask you about this list. Where'd you get it? I remember reciting it when we were kids. Did you make it up? Did you find it somewhere?
I don't remember. My son Joseph told me that I found it in the newspaper and that I cut out the article and that hung in our kitchen. But I don't know where that went. So I used my own memory to reconstruct it, and then I added a thing or two.
Because there were a couple things different that I remember. Like
Oh yeah,
if you turn it on, turn it off. If you open it, close it.
yeah.
Kind of same principle, but
Well, I wish those were added to it.
yeah, I was just curious if that was all from
Um,
your memory.
yeah, I reconstructed it from my memory. Um, okay, well, I'm glad you added those two things. That's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much and love to everybody.
Okay, bye bye.
Okay, bye bye.